Hello there! Today we are going to start a new topic in the series about classroom assessment. The topic is project-based assessment, or more commonly known as project-based learning. In this lesson, we are going to lay a foundation of project-based learning by finding the answers to these questions. What are projects? What is project-based learning? What are the common characteristics of project-based learning? What roles do teachers and students have in project-based learning? Why should we use project-based learning? Let's first start with the question, what are projects? Here, we don't talk about a project like building or financial projects or as a kind of class activity. We are putting project in project-based learning pedagogy. So what is a project in project-based learning? According to Petty 1996, a project is a task or a series of tasks that people should fulfill individually or in groups. Students can often decide themselves how, where, when, and in what order they will do the tasks. Previously, in 1991, Hammer defined a project as a multi-skill activity focusing on topics or themes rather than on specific language targets, which provides students with opportunities to recycle known language and skills in a relatively natural context. Hammer also noted that a project should involve investigation, reporting, commitment, and dedication from students, and the most important thing here is the end product. Therefore, well-designed projects ask students to tackle real problems and issues that have importance to students beyond the classroom. At the same time, students need to actively engage in their learning and make important choices during the project. Last but not least, students are normally required to demonstrate in tangible ways that they have learned key concepts and skills. Alright, now it's time to find out what project-based learning really is. Project-based learning is a teaching method in which students gain knowledge and skills by working for an extended period of time to investigate and respond to an authentic, engaging, and complex questions, problems, or challenge. It is a dynamic classroom approach in which students actively explore real-world problems and challenges and acquire a deeper knowledge. Project-based learning demands excellent assessment practices to ensure that all learners are supported in the learning process. Because in project-based learning, students often work in an extended period of time. It is normally assessed formatively. However, summative assessment is also common. Alright, now let's move on to the characteristics of project-based learning. Let's call them the 6A characteristics to make it easier for you to remember. The 6A here are authenticity, academic rigor, adult connection, active exploration, applied learning, and assessment practices. The first characteristic of project-based learning is authenticity. Projects designed with authenticity, which requires students work with purpose and passion by connecting project work to real-world issues that students care about. Another characteristic is academic rigor. Projects that feature academic rigor challenge students to fully engage their mind by mastering content standards and using professional-level thinking skills. The third characteristic is adult connections. Projects that incorporate adult connections support and inspire students through the meaningful involvement of adults beyond the classroom. The next characteristic is active exploration. Projects with active exploration engage the bodies and minds of students through hands-on, field-based work. Another characteristic is applied learning. Projects that integrate applied learning push students to use their learning right away to practice important skills demanded by the workplace. Last but not least is assessment practices. Projects with quality assessment practices provide opportunity for students to receive relevant feedback during or after their project work. Well, so once again, here is the list of 6 characteristics of project-based learning. Remember the 6A: authenticity, academic rigor, adult connection, active exploration, applied learning, and assessment practices. Alright, now let's move on to the next part, the roles of teachers and students in project-based learning. With traditional teaching approaches, which are still common in many classes in Vietnam, teachers' main duty is to transfer knowledge. However, project-based learning involves changing teaching practice, where teachers let go and encourage learners' voice and choice. Teachers' roles in project-based learning are firstly to select authentic tasks and to structure lessons or activities. After that, they model and coach their students to do tasks. At the same time, project-based learning students are self-directed. They can construct their own knowledge by working on the meaningful tasks. Another role of teacher in project-based learning is provide feedback on the whole learning process as well as the end products of students. Meanwhile, their students are never passive learners like in the traditional teaching and learning methods. Students in project-based learning are engaged and they always actively think about their learning. Well, you can see that there have been positive changes in the roles of teachers and students in project-based learning compared to our traditional teaching approach, which will certainly lead to positive changes in the learning outcome or teaching and learning quality in general. Alright, now you have managed to equip yourself basic knowledge of project-based learning, and I believe you can find your own reasons to use project-based learning in your class. So, can you share with us what can be a good drive for applying project-based learning? Thank you for sharing. On behalf of project-based learning team, I would like to tell you some of the reasons why we think teachers should use project-based learning. First, project-based learning makes school more engaging for students. Students are active, not passive. A project engages their heart and mind and provides real-world relevance for learning. 2. Project-based learning improves learning. After completing a project, students understand content more deeply, remember what they learn longer than which is not the case with traditional instruction. 3. Project-based learning builds success skills for college, career, and life. In a project, students learn how to take initiative and responsibility to build their confidence, solve problems, work in teams, communicate ideas, and manage themselves more effectively. 4. Project-based learning helps address standards. It is an effective way to meet the demands of real-world application of knowledge and skills. The development of success skills, such as critical thinking, problem solving, collaboration, communication in a variety of media, and speaking and presentation skills. 5. Project-based learning provides opportunities for students to use technology. Students get familiar with and enjoy using a variety of technology tools to find information and create products, collaborate more effectively, and connect with people around the world. 6. Project-based learning makes teaching more enjoyable and rewarding. Project allows teachers to work more closely with active, engaged students doing high-quality, meaningful work, and in many cases, to rediscover the joy of learning alongside with their students. 7. Project-based learning connects students and schools with communities and the real world. Projects enable students to solve problems and address issues important to them and their communities. Teachers learn how to interact with adults. Parents and community members can be involved in projects.
Hello and welcome to Teachings in Education, Project-Based Learning. Capture your students' attention with real-world problem. Project-based learning is often abbreviated to the acronym PBL, which will be used throughout the video. So, why should educators use PBL in their classroom? Projects are often assessed through presentations. Having students present more often helps students develop better communication skills. Many times, project assignments allow students to work with their hands and complete tasks. It's important for them to have developed some of these 21st century life skills. Projects are assigned as group activities. Being able to work with others is a necessary component of countless fields of work. PBL really comes in handy for those situations where students are just plain old bored of lectures. The best part of PBL is that it increases student engagement. Students will actually enjoy working on these projects and be much more pleasant while working. Who is PBL meant for? Now, it can be used for any student. However, it is most effective on certain types of students. At-risk students benefit the most from project-based learning. These students obviously struggle with typical classroom learning. PBL can be used for many different classes, but PBL is most prevalent in social studies, science classes, and art classes as well. One common misconception is that project-based learning is only meant for upper grade level courses. However, PBL may be incorporated from grades kindergarten through 12th grade. How to implement PBL in our classroom. Every class project should begin with a driving question that is specifically aligned to a learning goal. The level of complexity of the driving question should be appropriate for the type of students in the classroom. The next step for implementation is the inquiry process. Students should apply learned knowledge, ask and answer critical thinking questions, and locate resources. In the next step, students find a solution to the driving question. Here is where students solve the problems, oftentimes with creations, models, and presentations. And the last step is to allow students to make their projects available to the public, to give students a voice. Now that we have done all this talking about PBL, let's take a look at some classroom examples. Here are a few of my personal creations that I am very proud of. This is a project where I asked students to build a model of the Titanic and examine the ways the ship could have been built much better. It is a 6th grade social studies project and includes reasoning, writing, and research. The following project asked students to find the proper measurements and create a scale frame of a 2-bedroom hip model house. It was for a 12th grade math analysis course. And the last project asked students to convert from feet to inches and use the measurements to paint and create a miniature basketball court. It was actually used for an at-risk Algebra 1 course. Right now, I would just like to say thank you for your time and please subscribe to the channel.
Alright, I hope you can now answer the questions that I gave you at the beginning of the lessons. What are projects? What is project-based learning? What are the common characteristics of project-based learning? What roles do teachers and students have in project-based learning? And why should we use project-based learning in our class? By answering these questions, you have managed to set a foot in the land of project-based learning. However, you may be wondering about carrying out an actual project-based learning unit. In the next mini lessons, we will discuss the steps to design a project-based learning unit, as well as assessment in project-based learning. See you then!
You remember what it was like in school. It was boring. You sat in class, memorized as much as you could, and tried to pass a test at the end. But is that good enough? These days, school can be more interesting and effective by focusing students on work that matters. This is project-based learning explained. Most adults live in a world of projects. Whether it's a job assignment, home improvement, or planning a wedding, we need to actively solve problems. But unfortunately, schoolwork looks more like this than this. Let's take a look at this project-based world. Meet Claire. She was recently presented with a challenge. Her company, Super Suds, makes soap, and it was up to her to find the most earth-friendly way to produce it in the future. Her boss gave her a budget and a few requirements, and it was up to her to come up with a solution. She organized and managed a team who researched the options and created materials summarizing the issues. Claire's team asked for feedback and presented their findings to the boss. Claire came out of the project looking like a rock star, and she learned a lot about green products. If you look closely, Claire's success involved critical thinking, collaboration, and communication, things that aren't often taught in traditional classrooms. The world needs more Claires, so how do we get them? The answer is project-based learning, or PBL. By focusing students on a project, teachers put them on a path that deepens their knowledge and builds skills they'll need in the future. Here's what I mean. Mr. Simmons has always been a good science teacher, and his students do well on Friday's tests. Unfortunately, what they learned was gone by Saturday morning. That wasn't good enough for him. Soon he learned about project-based learning and decided to give it a shot. Mr. Simmons got the idea for his first project on microorganisms when nearly half of his students were suddenly absent with the flu. He asked his students why they thought so many of their classmates got sick at the same time. That lively discussion produced a lot of good questions and a list of things the kids wanted to know. Mr. Simmons then announced their project was to help elementary school kids understand, how can we not get sick? After dividing the class into teams, he got them started on the project. It was up to the students to ask questions, research, collaborate, give each other feedback, and figure out the best ways to make their points clear to children. One team chose to make an educational video on the connection between hand washing and avoiding the flu. Another chose to create posters to show how viruses spread. The project teams showed off their final work to an enthusiastic audience of parents and their children at a nearby elementary school. Sitting in the front row was our good friend and local rock star Claire, who saw a bit of herself in the students. It was clear that the project was a success for the students, the audience, and Mr. Simmons. His students practiced critical thinking, collaboration, and communication. The project wasn't about memorization, but learning in depth about viruses and how to prevent spreading disease, a lesson they will never forget. At the end of the presentation, Claire introduced herself to the students and told them that they were rock stars and that the world needs more people who can think like them. To learn more about project-based learning, go to BIE.org.